us, you just get to be Amanda. And what do we have to, some of us, go through to really learn and understand, to really see our gifts, talents, and abilities? And some of us, it takes a little bit more than others. But I would like to share a little bit with you. And recently, I had the opportunity, does anyone ever notice that life kind of happens in patterns? You know, like we go on this roller coaster, maybe not the best kind of roller coaster, but maybe one we want to get off, but we don't know how to end the cycle of it, to say, stop, I want off. That's how I feel life has been. And I really feel, as of recently, it was kind of interesting because we were talking about how long that I submitted my request to speak here, and if I would have spoken then to what I speak tonight, it would have been two totally different speeches, because life has happened so intricately for me over the last little bit. You know, the beginning of June, my dad passed away, and then suddenly, it was really quick. And then, at the end of June, I ended up in the hospital with a really traumatic infection, which I guess would result in that not sleeping properly, not taking care of myself. So a complete result of not looking after myself. But I got to take that opportunity to really use what I've learned and take the coaching practice that I had grown over the last 12 years of my life, the last 4 really most personal growth has happened, and apply it to my situation. And I got to see such different results that I'm really hoping and praying, and I know that it's going to change what's to come in the future, which is super exciting. I got to practice what I teach. And things that I've learned over the last 12 years, I really got to compact them into a month. And what I mean by that is, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't move. My body was, they call it a pseudo-relapse. So what that is, it's not a true MS relapse, but what it is your body acts like a relapse, where your muscles get really weak, I can't really move a lot, I don't have a lot of sensation. And so I was stuck in the hospital bed, not moving from the shoulders down. And it was the Sunday night, and in the middle of the night, my bladder, it felt like it was really, really painful. And so the nurse checked it, and my bladder wasn't even functioning. So they had to put in a catheter, which, if anyone has had to be hospitalized, that is not the greatest sensation ever, by the way. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what, it's okay to cry. And I just started crying. And I was like, my kids aren't coming in the next day. You know what, part of the grieving and getting over things is being able to mourn that. And so I cried, and I didn't really realize how much I cried until later that Monday afternoon. The nurse practitioner came into the room, and he says, ma'am, and he chose his words so beautifully. He really made sure that he wasn't tripping over his words. I know that having MS is a degenerative disease, and it can really be hard on your body, and it can make people really sad. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, do you think I'm depressed? That's not why I'm crying. And when he walked in, I don't think he was prepared for the conversation that was about to happen. I said, at 23, I became a widow, and I never emotionally dealt with it. I never knew that crying was not a weakness, because I was taught that crying was bad. You know, you're to keep it to yourself. Don't make other people around you feel awkward. Don't cry. I said, so I lost my dad not a month ago, and I'm crying. And it's okay. It's okay to visit these emotions, to express these emotions, because emotions create motion. And if I don't cry and I bundle them back up, I end up here, and I don't want to be here anymore. And so I said, not in this world, not here, but just not in this hospital bed. The food is really, it's okay, it's not the greatest. The service is, the nurses are really nice, but really, it's not really the cleanliest place. Like I said, I love you all for what you do, it's wonderful. But I said, you don't understand what I've been through to be in this hospital room at this second. And I said, what I've learned over the last little bit, I said, I'm a certified life coach. I teach people to be positive and happy, and I love life every day after watching someone die in front of me. I said, every day I wake up and I get the opportunity to take a breath is awesome. And I said, especially when I can put my own shoes on that day, it rocks. And he's kind of looking sideways at me like, oh man, I don't know if I should have stepped into this conversation. I said, life is awesome. Life is so wonderful. And I'm not done yet. I'm not even close to being done. I said, I want to go home. I married this incredible man after that has stood beside me for the last 12 years. Even after I was diagnosed with MS, he's picked my butt up off the floor. He's helped take care of me and took responsibilities that I couldn't always handle. Sweeping the floor is highly overrated anyways. Right? So I said, I'm not going anywhere, and that window is sealed so I can't jump out of it, and I can't get out of this bed, so I guess I'm stuck here for the minute. But he couldn't get over, like, I can't even imagine what the conversations were at the nurse's station to have this man, like, tiptoe very graciously into the room to have this conversation with me. But I said, I lost my dad, and I know that there's an emotional scale that we all need to deal. And it's okay to feel our emotions. It's okay to be real. And we always hide them because we're worried about what other people think of us. And really, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you. What matters is what you think of you and how proud you are of yourself. So I said, I may be laying at the moment in this hospital bed, and I may have a catheter, and I may not be able to get out. Not really the most comfort, but I said, I'm not going to be here for long. And the greatest thing about having that conversation with this man is I thanked him because he helped pull me out of a place where I was. By me being able to have the experience to share that with him, to say, I want to go home to my little guy. You see them come in, they run around the room, they make a lot of noise. I just want to go home so that I can do that at home. Although I'm not going to lie, I was in the truck on the way home and I was like, oh, put me back. As they all fight and whatever else. But, you know? And so it's about our desire and our passion and our wanting to live that really allows us to really push through. And I really want to live life on, you know, it's always, things are like, my kids, I've heard them say, well, that's impossible. Really? What if it was possible? Because the only impossible is the mindset. That's your thinking. But what if you put your brain on the counter for a minute and didn't worry about breathing because your heart's got that all under control and your lungs can work all by themselves? And what if it was possible? What if we are all here walking through sometimes some really challenging situations to help raise us up and to really find that power from within us to a place that we would have never looked if we wouldn't have had another option. When you only can look up and look within, then you can see so much more possibility. And that's really what I've learned through this entire journey. You know, being diagnosed with MS in 2006, I had two very small children. I had a 1-year-old and a brand new baby. And in 2009, my kids were only 4 and 3 when I woke up one morning and I couldn't walk. And we've had to figure it out. We became a team. And I just started looking at what I still could do versus what I couldn't. We can still bake, we just baked on the floor. We can still have competitions and races and do fun games. It just was done a little differently. You know, it was the kids put pillowcases under their legs and we crawled on the floor, and then it was a fair game. And we just did things different. We still can't. And the kids just got to learn a little bit more on how to be independent a little bit faster than probably most kids their age, and that's okay. But life still can go on. And there still is a way. And thinking and taking my mindset off the possible and realizing that the law of polarities is there's two opposites to every concept, right? There's water, and there's extreme hot, and there's extreme cold. So there's energy, there's positive, and there's negative, and it depends on where you look. There's either I'm impossible or possible, right? And so when I started looking at life in a different sense, then things started to change. When we first moved to Wetaskiwin 4 years ago, I didn't have wheelchair lifts in and out of the house. So what I would do when I would take my kids to school is I would crawl up and down the stairs in the morning to take them to school and to go pick them up. And I had a 3-year-old, so it was a really good thing that she was very independent and she could walk up and down the stairs and buckle herself in the seatbelt. Because once I dropped out of my chair and I crawled to the car, I had no wheels until I crawled back out of the car and crawled back up the stairs. And so sometimes I would get really tired. And so I would have to take a break on the garage floor and think, gosh, they're heated. And I would just lay there until I had enough energy to pick myself back up and crawl back in the house. And so my kids were so amazing that when I would get to the point of being so exhausted and tired, instead of being, Mom, it's, being frustrated or whatever, they kind of sense that a little bit at first. They'd be like, perfect opportunity for photo shoot. And so we'd sit in the garage and do photo shoots. That's my van behind me in the one picture of us. And we'd be sitting there doing photo shoots in the garage, while I was getting more energy, and we'd laugh and giggle and play music and have some fun until I had enough energy to go back in the house. And that's how we just did life. We went shopping that way. We just weren't the fastest. And people looked at us really funny when we had, my wheelchair, a stroller, and the shopping cart, and we had like a train that would go through the grocery stores. When they suspended my license because the MS had affected my legs, they're like, well, sorry, we don't understand how you could be tired in the morning and have enough energy to go out in the afternoon. I said, I have 2 toddlers. If I don't have enough energy to load them in the car, where am I going? They're like, it doesn't matter. And so they took my license away for a year, and so I had 2 choices. I could have sat at home and felt sorry for myself. Don't kid me wrong, there was a moment there where I was frustrated and tired and exhausted. But then it was like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. What can I do about this? And so what did we do? We moved into town. I got a scooter, and it took, just picture this. There's a scooter, and then I had calf ropes because we're from the farm. So I do farming. I lead cows, and we had ropes. And so I took one of the ropes out of the garage, and I tied a little red wagon to the back of this scooter with a calf rope. I put helmets on the kids, and that's how I pulled them around town. And so then I had, at the time, Emma was in kindergarten and Tyson was in preschool, and so I had to take them into school on the scooter, and I'd be going through the school, all the kids surrounding me, and here I got this little red wagon behind my scooter, and that's how I got them to class. And so there is a way to do and overcome obstacles, but it took me looking within myself to see that it was possible, to see that I had the ability and the strength and the gifts to be able to do that. And I can honestly, sitting in front of all of you tonight, tell you that I love myself more today, not in an egoic way, not in a self-conceited way, but in a proud pride way, more today than I ever did when I was fully capable of walking, because I didn't understand the gifts of being able to, that I had to offer the world. I always thought that I wasn't enough, or I needed to be more, or I needed to do things differently. But I didn't. And then things start to change. As soon as your mind shifts and your perception shifts, I start getting things like lifts put in my car to make life easier, right? I ended up getting a lift put in my garage to make life easier. Life is allowed to be easy. You don't have to crawl to get places. I felt like a princess sitting on the lift for the first time at the shop. I was like, oh my gosh, like it's awesome. And then this is me ending up in the hospital the last time, and I could still smile. I did coaching calls from my hospital bed. I have one client who's like, I need you, and I was but it's okay because I know that you're awesome and you could probably use it just as much as I can. And she was so right. So there I was, laying in bed, them taking my blood in the morning, and I'm sitting here on a coaching call just having a blast. I took that hospital experience and I took that environment and I made it my own. There was a lot of maybe not so positive people there that didn't love their jobs or didn't love being there, and I didn't super love being there either, but I couldn't change where I was at that second, so I made that second my own. I took my power back and said, if I had the opportunity to make this go however I want, what can I do to take my power back? So I started listening to voices that were stronger than my own. Wi-Fi is free at the hospital. So I started listening to positive podcasts. I put in Louise Hay, Abraham Hicks, Lisa Nichols, and I started to listen to people that were in a more positive place than I was. And I changed my mindset. I changed my thoughts. And that was Monday afternoon. By Tuesday morning, I had the catheter out. I was feeling good. I was getting out of the bed a little bit. By Wednesday morning, 8 o'clock, I was up. I had my shoes on. I was dressed, and I was like, I'm out. My husband calls me. He's like, are you coming? And they give you your release? I was like, I'm going home today. He's like, hon, are you, like, did they tell you could leave? I was like, I'm going. I'm leaving. And so when they showed up, I had my papers by that time, and my 7-year-old says, Mom, we're breaking you out. I said, yes, you are. And I said, in 2 days, I took myself from laying in a bed with a catheter and I couldn't get up and move, to putting my shoes on and saying, you know what, I'm taking control back of my life and I have more power than anybody else thinks I do. And that's the same for all of us. You know what? In the impossible, you guys, you're possible. And you can do anything you put your mind to. You are more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And so if nothing else, just I really want to show and share with people that no matter what happens in our lives, no matter how ugly that outer circumstance may be, you can change your environment up here, and that'll change your perception. And you have the power to make your life your own. Awesome. Thank you.